Hey, what's up guys, it's Kieran. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I am a junior doctor currently working on obstetrics and gynaecology, and one thing that I've learned since becoming a doctor just a little over a year ago is that just because you've graduated from med school doesn't mean the learning stops. And I take pride in the fact that my goal going into each and every day is to learn and improve, not only as a doctor but as a person. So this week I spent 2 days on a basic practical skills course, and I figured I would take you along with me. Okay, good morning. It is currently 5:45 a.m. I slept absolutely terribly last night. I think I got about 3 hours of sleep. I've just come off my 7 days in a row, so from Monday to Thursday I was doing 9 till 5, and then Friday to Sunday I was on night shifts, which are 9 p.m. until about 9:30 a.m. depending on how long handover is. So now that it is Wednesday, I've had 1 day off since my nights. I think my sleep schedule is still kind of fucked, but I have a course today and it's in Cardiff, so I needed to be up early and I was a little bit anxious about it overnight, so I kind of just knew there was no way I was going to be getting back to sleep at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'm up, I'm ready to go, and I'm actually quite excited. So I'm doing the Obs and Gynae basic practical skills course that's held by the Royal College of Obs and Gynae, and I think I'm doing it a little bit prematurely because other people I know that are signed up are either in training or already registrars, whereas I'm only an F2. I know it'll look really good on my application for Obs and Gynae, but I'm a bit worried that everybody's going to know more than me, everybody is going to be able to do more than me, and I might be a little bit out of my depth. So we shall see. At this point, I'm just hoping I make it through the day without falling asleep. This is going to be a really exciting week because this course is 2 days and then I'm heading to Paris for the weekend. Very random, but I wanted to take a solo trip and Paris is like my favourite place in the world, so I figured why not? Anyway, let's get going. This is honestly so nostalgic. I haven't been back to this hospital since I graduated. This quad right here is exactly where I got chased by a seagull for my chocolate bar and I lost. I was so sour about it. I was in the middle of revising for exams. My only joy of the day was this chocolate bar and I lost to a seagull. It was highly embarrassing. It's just so funny and weird to remember all these things. Good morning. It is now Thursday. I was absolutely exhausted by the time I got back yesterday. I hopped straight into bed at like 8:30 p.m, had a lovely long sleep, and then woke up nice and early this morning to sort some things out before I head off for day 2 of the course. But I wanted to quickly debrief on yesterday because I was pleasantly surprised. I was kind of worried when I first turned up that I was going to be the most inexperienced person there, but there was a huge range of people from other F2s to registrars, and they started off with the basics, and as the day went on things got more complicated, but in a good way, and I feel like I learned so much. It's exactly what I wanted in this course. They went through all of the basics. So we started off with surgical knot tying, which was the main thing that I wanted to cover because I've been really struggling with hand tying knots. It's really difficult to learn by yourself. So the fact that there were people there to teach and show you, it really helped. And we started on shoelaces, which also really helped because trying with sutures straight off is really difficult because it's like a thin thread. Your fingers get all fumbly. It's really difficult. So I loved how they started, and I'm not gonna lie, I ended up just nailing my knots. I'm so confident with them now and I'm really happy. So I was really enjoying myself just practicing my knots, and then next thing you know, I turn around and there's a literal pig's foot on my table. And this is the thing that bothers me. They didn't warn any of us that we were going to be practicing on live tissue. I probably wouldn't have minded if I just had some time to wrap my head around it and was expecting it, but they didn't tell any of us beforehand. So there's suddenly a pig's foot on the table. They're expecting us to practice suturing, and this did really bother me. It made me really sad. This used to be alive. It was an actual animal, and now I've just got one limb on my table that I'm supposed to cut and then suture. It just felt kind of inhumane, but I kind of just forced myself to get on with it. Everybody else was, and I wanted the practice. So I practiced my sutures quite a lot and I'm really happy with it. The rest of the day we ended up practicing a lot of like procedure type things. So they went through hysteroscopies, laparoscopic instruments, how to do a surgical evacuation for like a failed termination of pregnancy or a failed miscarriage and stuff like that. It was really hands-on, it was really good, and I'm so happy with how they set it out. I was worried that it was going to be sort of like an assessment kind of situation where everybody's put on the spot. It's really uncomfortable, you don't really want to be there, but it was super friendly and welcoming. The whole environment was just like no judgment whatsoever. Everybody had different skill sets and different levels of skill, and nobody really cared. It was just kind of you get on with it and you learn what you need to learn and take away from it what you want to take away from it. So I really enjoyed it and I'm very much looking forward to today. I think today is going to be a little bit more lecture based, so they're going to go through some videos on C-sections and hysteroscopies, hysterectomies, and pretty much do it like a Q&A. We can just ask whatever we want to ask. So that should be good, and then I'm heading straight home this evening. So I got up nice and early so that I could pack for Paris because I'm going to go home this evening and then my flight is tomorrow morning. So it's a quick turnaround, but I'm very excited. So I'm all ready to go, and it is now 6:37, so I'm officially late. I need to head off. It is quite a few days later. I'm just popping in to end off this vlog, but I did want to say that I thoroughly enjoyed this course. I feel like I learned more in 2 days than I've learned in the entirety of 4 months working on obs and gynae, and I think that is saying a lot. I have had many issues with teaching throughout this rotation, and it's not something I've talked about a ton because I wanted to try and stay positive, but it has been a real issue in terms of I just have not been taught by my seniors basically at all, and the fact that I learned more about how to do practical skills within 2 days of a course compared to 4 months of actually doing the job really does say a lot. And I want to say that it is part of your job as a doctor to teach. It is in the GMC guidance for doctors. It's an important part of learning yourself and also helping other people learn. I just remember when I was a medical student, I felt completely useless on placements. I would just follow people around. Most of the time I would be ignored, and I vowed to myself that I would never be that kind of doctor that ignores students or ignores my juniors. I always want to get them involved and help them learn, and I also love teaching, so I've carried that with me over the last, well, year and a bit, and it's just such a shame to work with people who don't have that sentiment. It's really annoying, specifically for me, because I made it very clear that I wanted to go into obs and gynae, and not many people took an interest in teaching me. I really had to take it into my own hands, and it's such a shame. I really wanted to get a lot more out of this rotation than I did, and that's why I signed up for this course, not only because it'll look really good on my application, but because I had certain goals that just weren't being met when I was at work. I would highly recommend this course to anybody who wants to go into obs and gynae or has just started training. It is really useful to get to terms with the basics, and I feel a lot more confident in a lot of skills in terms of like surgical skills, suturing, knot tying, as well as basic procedures, which I really wish I did the course earlier in the rotation. It wasn't offered earlier, but I wish it was, so that then I could take these skills and transfer them into my work and just kind of force myself into those situations in a way, because it's very difficult when you have absolutely no foundation. You need somebody to talk you through the basics, but when you don't have somebody there willing to do that, you don't get to do any of it. So for example, the first time I learned how to close the skin in a C-section, it was a consultant that taught me, because every single time I asked when I was scrubbed in with registrars, they either said no, maybe next time. They didn't have time to teach me. They just weren't willing to talk me through how to do it. It was a consultant that took the time to do that, and once she did that once, ever since then, every time in a C-section I said, can I close the skin? And they ask, do you know how to? And I say, yeah, and then they let me do it. So it's not the case that they're not letting me do things, it's that they're not willing to teach me how to do it before they let me do it, if that makes sense. So I just wish that I did this course earlier, so I had that foundation and I could just jump straight into it and not really need anybody to teach me in the first place. But I guess that's just how the cookie crumbles. This is how it's turned out, and I feel like I'll forever be a little bit bitter about this situation, because I really did want to get way more out of 4 months than I did. But you win some and you lose some when it comes to rotations during foundation years. I absolutely loved my cardiology rotation in F1. I got a lot of teaching when I was with consultants and clinical fellows, but then in comparison, when I was on general surgery, I got very little teaching. I was still very supported, but they didn't really teach, whereas in obs and gynae, I feel like I had very little support and very little teaching. So it's very hit or miss. It depends where you are and what your team is like, and I'm just glad it didn't defer me from wanting to go into obs and gynae. I still love the profession and the career path that I'm heading down. I love that you work with women. I love that it's very much surgical and medical. I love every part of it, and I'm very passionate about it. But I feel like there are other people who were, if they were in my situation with the lack of senior support and teaching and learning, that probably would have switched their minds. They probably would have given up on this profession. So you do really win some and lose some. I think the whole aspect of teaching is always going to bother me because it's part of your job. I'll say that again and again, and when I have medical students, I always make such an effort to teach them so that they don't feel like they're uninvolved and useless. I want them to be learning. I want them to feel good by the end of the day, and I wish other people had that same thought process. I remember while I was in F1, part of getting signed off for the year is getting feedback from various different people, including other doctors, nurses, midwives, pharmacists, anybody really. And one of the nurses on my ward gave anonymous feedback that I prioritise teaching medical students too much over doing my ward job, and I was unbelievably pissed off by this comment, and I spoke to my consultant about it because, like I say over and over again, part of your job as a doctor is to teach, and a lot of teaching comes from doing the ward work with those students, especially if it's 5th year students. I like to get them involved in ward rounds, writing in notes, prescribing, teaching them why we're doing things, because that's going to be their job very soon. And that's what I found most helpful in 5th year, was learning the job of an F1 rather than learning all of these scientific facts and figures that you don't really need to know as an F1. I want to teach 5th years the practical side of it so they feel more prepared going into their job as a junior doctor, because it is a scary transition going from student to doctor, and I remember it really well. So I took a lot of pride in talking my students through how to be an F1, and then I got this feedback that I was teaching too much and not getting my job done, which was completely untrue. I was teaching, but I always got my job done, and I took pride in that too. I really take pride in the fact that I do my job and I do it well, and I teach in the meantime. So I spoke to my consultant, and he said from different people's perspectives it looks like you're doing different things. So as a consultant, he is not on the ward a lot, and so he always gets feedback that he's not present, he's hard to get a hold of, he's not very accessible. But the people giving that feedback are usually the people based on the wards who don't understand he has to be on call, he has to be in clinics, he has to be dictating letters and doing paperwork and admin. There are so many parts of his job that people don't see, so it's all about perspective. He was trying to make me feel better about the fact that somebody turned a huge positive in my job and my life, teaching, into a negative, and gave it as negative feedback and said that she had some concerns about how I did my job. And I was so bitter. I'm still kind of bitter. I've gotten over it, but I think it's such a shame that that was the perspective of this one nurse, and all of my other feedback was glowing. It was lovely, and I was very proud of myself, but I am the type of person that really just gets caught up on the negatives. There can be one negative feedback and 20 positives, and I will be caught up on that negative for, well, clearly months. So I just wanted to talk about that. I think teaching is really important, and without it, people feel very lost, and that is kind of how I felt during my obs and gynae rotation. And the fact that I felt like I was begging to learn and to be taught, I escalated it to multiple people and nothing was done, was such a shame. And the fact that I had to pay to go on a 2-day course so that I was meeting my goals was also a shame. But I want to look at the bright side of it, and the fact that I really enjoyed this course. I learned an insane amount. I would recommend it to anyone and everyone who wants to go into obs and gynae, and that's what I'm going to try and take away from it. But I did want to talk about it because I think people forget that once you become a doctor, that doesn't mean that you just stop learning or stop teaching. Either end of the spectrum, you're always going to be doing both, or you should always be doing both. Anyway, I'm going to end off this vlog here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe for more. The Paris vlog will be up next, and I hopefully will see you there. Bye!